Hello.
Good evening, Robert. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you tonight?
Good, good, Michael. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here on the show. And I couldn't remember if we had you on before. I thought we did. Have you? Do you remember? Have you been here?
No, I haven't been on with you folks, so
No.
this is the first time.
Oh, okay. Well, great. It's a great topic, I'll tell you that. So I'm looking forward to diving in. Robert, why don't we start out with a little background? Tell people what got you interested in lucid dreaming and going down this road and writing the books and just the whole interest of it all.
Yeah, I was one of those young guys who just had a incredible dream life. Sometimes I'd have precognitive dreams. Sometimes I'd have dreams where a voice would explain what was going on in the dream. And so I just had this fascinating dream life. Then, when I was a junior in high school, I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan, and that's his third book. And in this book, his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, is suggesting to him that he become consciously aware in his dreams by finding his hands. And I thought that's interesting. I'd never ever heard of that and wondered if it was possible. So what I did, each night before I'd go to sleep, I'd just look at the palms of my hands while telling myself, tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And after doing that for about 5 minutes each night before I went to sleep, on the third night I was having a dream that I was walking through my high school hallway when suddenly my hands popped right in front of my face and I realized, oh, this is a dream. And it was an utter amazing, fascinating, profound experience. And so that's how I got hooked into lucid dreaming. After that, I realized here's this simple technique that anyone can use to become lucid. And once you become lucid, it's one of the mind-blowing experiences that people could ever have in their life.
So, what is the difference then between lucid dreams versus other dreams? For those who may not know, what's the difference?
Yeah, in a lucid dream, you consciously realize this is a dream. You know you're dreaming. So when you think of a normal dream, you just kind of go along with whatever happens. So if I find myself in Greenland and I flew there on a personal jet, it just never occurs to me to question any of that. I just go along with it. I never think, how did I get to Greenland? Whose jet is this? Or anything like that. I just go along with it. And so in a normal dream, we don't reflect on what we're doing. We just go along. We create a story to make sense of it, and we just run with it. But in a lucid dream, something strange happens. We think, wait a second, I don't own a personal jet. What's going on here? And at that moment of critical reflection, of critical awareness, we become lucidly aware. And as soon as you become lucidly aware, then you can begin to direct and influence yourself within this dreaming, and you can just do some extraordinary, amazing things.
Now, what would justify being aware? Because I've had dreams where I remember them today. They happened years ago, and I can remember them. They were that clear to me. But so I felt aware during the dream, but I still didn't feel like I had any control. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. So that's a good point, because sometimes people think when I'm talking about a lucid dream, I just mean a really vivid dream, something that really affected me or just sticks in my mind and seemed real at the time. That's a vivid dream. In a lucid dream, you consciously know. For example, you might see a deceased relative and go, wait a second, grandma's been dead 10 years now. And at that moment, the only way you can explain it to yourself is by realizing, oh, this is a dream. And so at that moment, you know this is a dream. And as soon as you know it's a dream, then you can begin to make choices. You can go flying, walk through walls. You can do extraordinary, incredible things. But that's the difference. You know this is a dream, and you're totally, utterly, completely convinced of it.
Incredible. So now, what is happening in our minds during the dream state? What's going on in our minds that this happens? Because it's so real. It's like there. it's almost like the body and the brain falls asleep, and I guess the mind and the consciousness kind of say, okay, the kids are sleeping, let's get out of here for a little while.
Yeah. So each night, all of us spend about 2 hours, or about 23% of the night, in the dream state, and that's true of everybody, even people who claim they never dream. Unless you have some neurological condition or missing some brain lobes, you are dreaming. So about 2 hours, or 23% of the night, we spend dreaming. And it goes in various stages. As the night progresses, the dreams get longer. And what we've found in scientific studies is that lucid dreams are more likely to occur in the final 2 dream periods of the night. So those are the dream periods that are quite long, that might be 30 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour long. So those are long dream periods. But what happens, and they've done some scientific studies where they've looked at the brain in people who are lucid dreaming. And just so everyone understands, I'll tell you how they scientifically created the evidence that showed that lucid dreaming occurs. So back in 1978, there was Stephen LaBerge in California at Stanford. And then in 1975, there was Keith Hearn at the University of Hull in England. And both of these gentlemen realized that lucid dreaming had never been scientifically validated, but they wondered, could you move your eyes in a lucid dream and signal with your eyes that you're dreaming? And so they realized that in normal dreams, we all have rapid eye movement, that our eyes are kind of fluttering around. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and look at somebody, you might see them having that rapid eye movement experience. Yeah. But they thought if you became consciously aware in a dream and knew you were dreaming, maybe you could move your eyes left to right 8 times, and that would be captured by the rapid eye movement polygraph pad readout machine, and provide the evidence for lucid dreaming. And so in 1978, Stephen LaBerge took himself into the sleep lab there at Stanford, and he began a series of experiments in which he signaled with his eyes left to right a certain number of times that he was lucidly aware. And he published that in 1980 and kind of became very well known as kind of the main researcher in lucid dreaming. So that's how they've scientifically validated lucid dreaming. But the great thing about lucid dreaming is you can signal with your eyes, you're lucidly aware, you can conduct experiments, you can even begin to kind of probe the dream state. How does the dreaming mind actually work? Because for a lot of us, it seems pretty bizarre and symbolic and full of all sorts of strange things. But when you're consciously aware, you have that capacity to explore the subconscious mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I'll tell you, I've had some dreams that, thank God I woke up. I mean, I literally woke up with cold sweats. I mean, I had one dream one time where I actually got shot 5 times in a dream. I woke up and I actually hurt where I got shot. I mean, I felt pain in those spots for a few seconds.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the interesting things about dreaming is that, when we're dreaming, we're actually releasing a fair amount of neurochemicals. We might have adrenaline when we're being chased or shot, and we might have all sorts of neurochemical events kind of occurring in response to what we're seeing in our dreams. And so the idea of waking up on the wrong side of the bed or having these kind of experiences where we wake up with our heart pounding, I mean, this is very much for real. But I think it shows one of the beautiful things that lucid dreamers have kind of gotten into, and maybe we can talk about later, but it's the idea, if you're consciously aware in a lucid dream, can you use it to physically influence your body and maybe even possibly heal your body of a physical ailment? And so that's why this mind-body connection of dreams seems quite fascinating, because once you become consciously aware in a lucid dream, then you can explore that and experiment with it on your own.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was going to ask you about down the line here is whether it can be used, lucid dreaming could be used for not only healing but diagnosing.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that lucid dreaming can be used for. If people really understood it, and that's why I've written this new book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, to help people not only learn how to induce lucid dreams, and I give a lot of techniques that have been shown to effectively induce lucid dreams, but also I talk about how to stabilize the lucid dream, because once you become consciously aware in a dream, it doesn't mean that it's just going to be a steady state from there on. A lot of people realize that if you get too excited during the lucid dream, you're going to pop out, and there's other things that you have to know in order to stabilize the dream. And then finally, it's how to manipulate within the lucid dream. Because in some ways, you're really not manipulating the dream so much as you're manipulating your mind. And so you have to realize these psychological abilities that you have to kind of manipulate the experience towards your own best end. But that's why I wrote this new book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple. I just wanted to make it very clear for people, wanted to give them everything that I'd learned in my 40 years of lucid dreaming.
Fantastic. And where can they get it? The book, that is.
You know, they can always go to their local bookstore and support their local bookstore. It's Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple by Robert Wagner. Also, you can find it on the Apple's iTunes iBook store, Amazon, and it's also in MP3 and CD versions, audio versions for folks who want that. So you can find it at all the normal places, and it's really a book that I created to introduce people to lucid dreaming, and also for people who have had 20 or 30 lucid dreams but want to accelerate their progress, want to go deeper into it and understand how to kind of master lucid dreaming.
Okay, and how does one stay, or even why does one stay conscious in the dream state with a lucid dream? Why would you, I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, so they've done these studies where they've brought people into the sleep lab, and like one of them, they had a 19-channel EEG scalp recordings, all put on their head as they went to sleep. And then when they became lucidly aware, they signaled with their eyes that they are lucidly aware. And then the researchers could see, what does the brain look like? What's the brain activity like when you're in a lucid dream? And one of the fascinating things they found is that the normal part of the dreaming brain, which is more around the brainstem and the old part of the brain, is all active like it would be in a normal dream. But along with that and simultaneous with it, parts of the cerebral cortex, part of the frontal lateral cortex, are simultaneously active. And that's the newer part of the brain that, holds our sense of self-awareness, our ability to reflect on things, our sense of a being or a self in space. And those parts of the brain are simultaneously active. And researchers were really amazed to see, and some called it a hybrid state of consciousness, because the dreaming part of the brain's active, but parts of the conscious mind or conscious brain are simultaneously active. And so that's part of it. In a lucid dream, we move from just going along with a regular dream to suddenly having some sense of critical reflection, our self-awareness. We kind of understand, wait a second, what am I doing in Tokyo? I don't live in Tokyo. Oh, this must be a dream. We have that sort of moment of critical awareness, and then that's enough to shift the trajectory of the dream, and now we're lucidly aware, where we can begin to influence and decide what exactly it is that we want to do. And so the research results have shown, that the experience that lucid dreamers have all been talking about, that critical reflection, that sense of awareness, that making decisions and choices of what to do, it all occurs within the lucid dream state.
So now that would make me wonder even more about my next question. That is dreaming comparable to death? It's it's almost like getting a taste of what's to come, because I don't know. It's when you're sleeping, if you could go on all these adventures and have all these wild things happen, I gotta wonder if that's not the spirit's playground or something.
Well, it's an interesting thing to bring up. Um, the lucid dreaming has been scientifically validated since 1980, but for thousands of years before that, various spiritual traditions have been talking about lucid dreaming. There's been shamanic traditions, and also there's the Buddhist and the Hindu and Sufi traditions have all been talking about lucid dreaming. In fact, oftentimes when you'll read books on dream yoga, which is kind of the Buddhist philosophical practice that includes lucid dreaming, basically the writers normally say that lucid dreaming is a preparation for the death experience and the after-death experience, because at that moment, you have to hold your awareness together in order to understand how to respond to what you're experiencing, because it's in many respects quite dreamlike. And so if you have enough experience as a lucid dreamer, you'll know how to respond most appropriately. But you're right. In some regards, dreaming is similar to death in as much as we exist in a mental space is what I want to say. So when you think of like an idea of heaven or something like that, it's in one way it's kind of like a mental or a spiritual space. I mean, you don't have to eat food, you don't have to go to the groceries, you don't have to put gas in your car, from what I can imagine. And so lucid dreaming is much like that. You become consciously aware within the dream state. You learn, you grow, you experience things, but you don't have those physical needs. And so in some ways it is actually quite comparable to what I would imagine the after-death experience would be like.
I hope that's what it's like. I mean, I just hope it's not as confusing. I mean, sometimes you could have dreams that are just crazy. I mean, they just don't make any sense at all.
Oh, yeah. And that's the wonderful thing about lucid dreaming is you realize when you have your conscious mind and you understand what's going on and how you can make choices, and also how your thoughts influence the lucid dream, then you realize that there's actually rules and principles that you need to learn. And those are the kind of things that I put in my book that, I taught myself how to do this in 1975 when I was a junior in high school, and the scientific evidence didn't emerge until 1980 and 1981. And so for about 5 years, I basically did it by myself, and I kind of learned by doing, by having more and more lucid dreams. I began to see, there's these rules. You can't get too excited in a lucid dream or you'll wake up. Or there's another rule that you can't stare fixedly at something for a long, long time, because then the dream will get shaky and you'll wake up. And so you begin to realize there's these rules, and later on when you meet other lucid dreamers and talk to them, you realize that they learn the same exact rules. And so it's kind of like, Carl Jung had this idea of the collective unconscious and the objective psyche, and it's kind of like that. It's kind of like this other realm where there's rules and principles that everybody agrees to, but on another level, there's kind of a subjective aspect as well. And I guess in some ways that's kind of like waking life. There's objective aspects and subjective aspects, and by learning the rules, you get along better in whatever experience reality you find yourself in.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've had dreams too where I get mad that I woke up. I want to go back. It was so much better than reality. But, unfortunately, those ones don't last long. But maybe take us into this just a little deeper and how you trained yourself to become aware in your dreams. I mean, can everybody do that? Is this something that, I mean, it sounds like you have to be pretty disciplined to do it.
Well, there've been some psychological surveys or studies of college-age students, and they'll ask them, have you ever become consciously aware of dreaming while in the dream? And normally, here in the States, when they ask a group of college-age psych students that question, basically around 70% of the students say, yes, they've had that experience before. And then when they ask them, well, how often do you have that experience? Do you have it at least once a month? There's about 20% or so who say, oh, yeah, they have it once a month. They'll become lucidly aware and realize they're dreaming within the dream. So when you look at the population at large here in the States and Western Europe, you'll probably find about 50 to 55% of people say that they've had at least one lucid dream. But younger people, it seems, report having more lucid dreams. But it does require a little bit of discipline, of course, to become a good lucid dreamer. I mean, you have to develop some habits, and probably the first habit you have to develop is good dream recall. Without good dream recall, you're not going to play the game very well. So it helps to at least remember at least one dream a night, if not 2 or 3 or 4 dreams a night. And once you have that good dream recall down, then it's creating one of these practices. Like, I'm just going to focus again on this practice that I started back in 1975. So again, each night before I'd go to sleep, for about 5 minutes, I'd just sit in my bed and look at the palms of my hands. And I just kind of quietly look at them while repeating in myself like a hypnotic suggestion. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And so I'm kind of doing like Ivan Pavlov and his dogs. Everyone remembers how Pavlov was this Russian physiologist. He would bring in the dogs to feed them, and every time he fed him, he'd ring a bell. And then after a while, he could just ring the bell, and the dogs would begin to salivate because they expected to be fed. And so that's what they called a conditioned response. He conditioned them to respond in a certain way by this stimulus of ringing the bell. And so that's what I was doing by looking at my hands while telling myself, tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Because in the dream, when suddenly they just popped right in front of my face, the first thing I thought is, oh, my hands, this is the dream. And so I conditioned myself to respond when I saw my hands like that. Or sometimes I'd be in a dream and I'd be reaching out my hand to open up a door or reaching up to climb a ladder, and I'd see my hands and I'd stop and think, wait a second, my hands, this is a dream. And so in that Pavlovian response, he did it every time he fed the dogs because he realized to create that stimulus response situation, you needed to do it consistently and persist with it. And so that's why when I encourage people to do these lucid dream techniques, I encourage them to do them, plan to do it for a month or something. Even though a lot of people will have a lucid dream within 2 or 3 nights of practicing this. I remember one woman told me that she was doing this habit of looking at her hands before she went to sleep, and her husband came in and asked her what she was doing, and she told him the technique and what it was all about. And the next morning, he said in the middle of the night, his hands popped right in front of his face, and he realized, oh, my hands, this is a dream. And he had a lucid dream. And so it's interesting how some people, they'll just hear about it, and the next night they'll have a lucid dream. So it might take some people longer, but it's one of those things that if Ivan Pavlov can do it with dogs, you can do it with yourself and become lucidly aware in your own dreams.
Well, I would suggest that people get a really good night's sleep before they go to work if they work, on heights, because I could just see being at work, being a bit sleepy, you're on your lunch break, and I've had guys I've worked with who they'll take naps on those lunch breaks, and you'd hate to be going up the ladder and you're getting tunnel vision, you focus on your hands, you think, well, it's just a dream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does help to have a good night's sleep, and for some of the techniques that you'll find in my book, they're kind of ones that I recommend that people might want to try on the weekend, because on some of the techniques you need to play around with your sleeping habits a little bit. But the nice thing about the looking at your hands and finding your hands in the dream state is that you do it for about 5 or 6 minutes before you go to sleep. And then all you have to do is when you wake up spontaneously in the middle of the night, you have to think, oh, did I see my hands? What was I just dreaming about? And normally within a week or so, you'll have a lucid dream.
Yeah, something else that's crazy that happens, and this isn't lucid, but having a dream, waking up, you remember it, and then just as the minutes go, you just more and more of it fades away. And how you could forget what you just, a dream like that so fast is beyond me. I try to keep a pad and a pen near my bed. And most times, if it's worth it, I'll write it down. If it was, if I'm running around Mickey Mouse, I'm not going to worry much about that.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's one of those things. After a minute or two, sometimes it can be quite difficult to recall what you dreamt. And so, for someone like myself, often I'll wake up in the middle of the night spontaneously, and then I'll think, what was I just dreaming? And in my dream notebook, I'll just jot down a few notes like Greenland, airplane, and just so in the morning when I see that, I can remember, oh yeah, I flew up to Greenland in an airplane and so on. But without making some notes to kind of jog your memory, it can be a challenge to remember dreams.
Yeah. Now, how many studies have been done on the dream state, and what has it proven scientifically?
Well, in a general sense, we still don't know exactly why we dream. We know that we do dream. About 23% of the nights spent in dreaming, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, that each night we spend about 2 hours in the dream state. Because if you sit and think about it, after 11 years of living, you'll have spent one entire year in this alternate state of dreaming. And it's kind of wild to think, why is dreaming so important? What is it about dreaming that gives it such a prominent feature in our makeup? But the other studies on dreams, they seem to show that dreams help us with memory consolidation. Dreams seem to help us with emotional issues or emotional resolution. And dreams also seem to help with creativity. There's been some interesting studies. There's one at the University of Lubeck in Germany. They gave this group of students, before they went to sleep, they gave them a math problem that had an elegant solution, but it was a creative, elegant solution to this difficult math problem. And so they gave it to one group of students at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they brought them the test papers 8 hours later to ask them to figure it out. And the other group, they gave it to them before they went to sleep. And what happened, the group that had a chance to sleep on it, 60% of them came up with the creative, elegant solution to resolving the math problems. But of the other group who stayed awake the whole time and were given 8 hours to think about it, only 20% of them came up with the elegant solution. So in some of these studies, it appears that dreams also help with creativity. But the interesting thing about lucid dreaming, when you're consciously aware in the dream state, you can actively access inner creativity. And in my book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, I show how people go about actively accessing inner creativity. And it's amazing. When you're consciously aware in your subconscious mind, you have incredible access, if you know how to go about it, to some amazing creativity. And so again, we really don't understand why we dream, but we definitely do dream. And now we scientifically know that we also lucid dream when we develop the ability. And in lucid dreaming, we just open up the door to incredible potential.
And the fact that we do dream and that we all dream, even there's some people say, "Oh, I don't dream." Yes, you do. Everybody dreams. Now, the fact that that happens, there's got to be a reason for it. I would think. Well, that's the way I think of things, anyways. There's got to be a reason. So, I just would wonder, what is that reason? Had we unlocked it, in ancient times, and it's been lost, and we're trying to unlock it again. But I bet there's a real good purpose for it.
I think there's some studies they did one time on mice, and so imagine these little mice, and the researchers would allow them to sleep, but whenever they started to dream, the researchers would wake them up. And so the researchers monitored these mice and kept them from dreaming. They allowed them to sleep, they could eat as much as they wanted to, and they could just live like all the other mice there in the lab. But as I recall, I think it was after about 6 or 7 days of no dreams, the mice spontaneously just began to die. And so it was like there was something about, even though they had enough food, and even though they were getting some sleep, but every time they'd start to dream, they'd be woken up. It was just, there was something about dreaming that was so vitally important that without that dreaming, they ceased. And so I don't think there's been too many studies like that, but you're right. To spend 2 hours every night in the dream state, you just have to assume it plays some vitally important role. And that's the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming. It allows you to consciously aware, you can begin to explore that inner realm, knowing that it is a dream, and going about your own personal experiments and doing just extraordinary things, especially if you know how.
Yeah, and this is why when I go to bed at the wee hours of the morning, when I finally get to bed and get to sleep, when I lay there, I try to guide my mind to whatever, I think about whatever I want to kind of guide me through the night, I guess. So I don't think about none of my work. Anything I do on this radio show, out of my head when I lay down. That's why I like little hobbies like sports and stuff, because I could think about a sports team and have pretty decent, dreams that I don't even remember by the time I wake up in the morning, rather than having nightmares about planets smashing into us.
Yeah, exactly. There are some scientists who have this theory that they call it continuity theory, that what you work on and focus on and think about during the day continues in your dream state. And so that's why I think there's a lot of people like you, if you've just interviewed somebody who's talking about asteroids hitting the planet or something, I mean, you want to kind of get that out of your mind before you go to sleep, because you don't want to have a nightmare, about being in some weird situation where an asteroid is going to, flatten Toledo or whatever. And so it's interesting, how the mind works. But I agree with you. In basic terms, it's better to put your mind in a good place, read a book, do something, and especially if you're going to get into lucid dreaming, it helps to kind of quiet your mind a little bit and focus on your intent to become consciously aware in the dream state before you go to sleep.
Yeah, that's why I stay up. I have to unwind after a show. I'm up at definitely a couple hours after the show, so I never get to bed before usually 3 a.m. And for a while, my wife, she's like, why do you stay up every night? If I couldn't go right to sleep after a show, if I could lay in the bed and be out like a light, but it wouldn't be good for me, I don't think. So I do other things to push everything aside in my mind and fill it with new things before I go to sleep. It's worked for me, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a good habit. A good habit to have.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we're going to take a break here. So I worked it out while I was sleeping, and it might have been a dream, but whatever it was, I woke up and I knew the answer.
Yeah. In my book, I talk about basically 6 ways that you can use lucid dreaming to better your life. And so probably the first one is when you become consciously aware in a lucid dream, you can have a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes it's one of the most incredible experiences by virtue of just how much fun you can have. But to be more serious, you can also use it, again, to access inner creativity, to seek out solutions to problems, to seek out creative things, whether it's artwork or a painting, or it's a book that you're writing, or whatever it is. Oftentimes you can get that all resolved in a lucid dream. And then in the book, I note an entire chapter on how people have used lucid dreaming for emotional healing. And I think this is one of the most powerful ways to use lucid dreaming, because it's already being used by some therapists to help people with recurring nightmares from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so they teach the people how to become lucidly aware in the recurring nightmare. And normally, once they do that, they never have the recurring nightmare again. And then you can also use lucid dreaming, I believe, for physical healing or for physical improvement. You can use lucid dreaming to engage what I believe is a larger awareness, or yourself with a capital S. If you know how to do it, you can do that in a lucid dream. And finally, you can use it, I think, for spiritual growth. So lucid dreaming has a lot of ways that you can use it to better your life. But again, you've got to know how to become lucid, how to stabilize that lucid dream, and then how best to experiment. And that's why I wrote the book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple.
Fantastic. Now, where is the dream state? Some people, they'll ask often, where exactly is the dream state? Is this something that's created in the mind? I mean, where does our mind go?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, because sometimes, especially with recurring dreams, we'll find that we're back in the same place, and the only time we go to that place is in the dream realm, and it kind of makes you wonder, inside of our mind, do we have, mental models of places and return to them on occasion? So on one level, you could say, oh, it just all happens in your brain, but in my book, I give some examples of where people have gotten information across space and time when they're lucidly aware, consciously aware in a dream, and able to seek it out. And so then it makes you wonder, when we're aware in a dream, do we have that capacity to kind of delve into a collective unconscious where knowledge exists, or do we have that ability to kind of break through the normal linear space and time and explore maybe the actual nature of space and time, which is much more malleable? But in any case, where it all happens is a good question. It's just one of those things that, by experimenting with this in a rational and thoughtful way, I think you can really blow your mind and get some incredible possible answers to that.
I see. Now, you talked earlier briefly about lucid dreaming being used to either diagnose or heal. Do you know of any situations that's happened where somebody has, been able to diagnose themselves and save their life, essentially, from a lucid dream?
It's interesting. When it comes to this idea of physical healing in a lucid dream, there's a friend of mine, Ed Kellogg, who's written some various papers on the idea of physical healing in lucid dreams. And he found that in lucid dreams, he'd say that there's 3 ways that lucid dreams could help a person physically. There's curative lucid dreams, where when you become consciously aware in the dream, you actively try to heal your physical body. So that's one type. He said another type would be prescriptive lucid dreams, where you become consciously aware in the dream and you get a prescription on what to do in order to resolve the physical issue. So in the lucid dream, you might get advice like stop eating this, or begin to eat that, or do this exercise, or maybe even go to this doctor or talk to this person. Sometimes the healing, when it's prescriptive, is more about what to do, and if you follow through in the waking state, you'll often resolve the issue. But the final is, like you say, the diagnostic aspect. because sometimes doctors honestly don't understand what's wrong with the person, and it might be for a very good reason, because sometimes a person might have two diseases at the same time. So, if you have a liver disease and some other ailment simultaneous, you have confusing symptoms, and the doctor, really can't figure out what's going on. And so what some lucid dreamers have done is they've gotten accurate information about their current illness or a coming illness by being consciously aware in a lucid dream. I remember talking to one woman who told me that when she becomes consciously aware in a lucid dream, because she's in the healing profession, she'll announce the name of the person that she wants information about, and she'll ask to be shown what their situation is. And she says sometimes a voice will announce the test that the person needs to take, the medical test the person needs to take in order for the doctors to confirm what the issue is. Or sometimes she'll say she sees kind of like a hologram of the person, and then she'll see the two parts of the body that are inflamed, and she realizes that, they have two ailments, one here and one there, and that's why the situation is confusing. And I remember when she told me about this, I asked her, well, how long have you been doing this? And she told me she'd been doing it for quite a number of years, and that she had yet to be wrong. She had always gotten correct information. So that's what's interesting, to use lucid dreaming for either physical healing as a curative method or a prescriptive method, and also as a diagnostic method.
Is it, can it be used, I guess, like a remote viewing? I mean, because I've heard of people who have dreams, and these dreams tell them of a future event, and I'll be damned if these events don't happen.
And in some ways, you might kind of liken it to something like remote viewing, except you're consciously aware in the dream state. And so by being consciously aware at that deep state, you have access to a lot of information. Now, the important thing, just like remote viewers would tell you, is sometimes you can get literal information, but sometimes there'll be symbolic information mixed in. And so as a lucid dreamer, you have to realize sometimes when you're getting literal information and sometimes when it's a symbolic situation and all. So in remote viewing and shamanic journeying and some of these various things that people talk about, oftentimes they sound much like a lucid dream, except a lucid dream occurs when you're consciously aware in the dream state.
Yeah, I have to be careful. I could be influenced by these. I watched this movie about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was about these kids. They were supposed to have died. They cheated death per se, but they had to, eventually they died. They weren't going to cheat it. Well, in it, they were looking at these photographs, and there was like clues in their photographs of how they were going to die. So I found myself one night, just for the hell of it, I pulled up some pictures and started looking, because I'm thinking, boy, what if there is something? I mean, that kind of stuff could really go to your head. Now, that's not something you want to take to the dream state with you, but it's fascinating. I mean, it really is. But the whole healing aspect, I think, is tremendously fascinating about it. And I had dreams of health problems and things, and I never took them any serious. And then I did have a health scare back in September, and so but it was nothing major. It's like the dream didn't come out and say, "Hey, you're going to have a heart attack." But
Yeah.
I would wake up with the sweats and things. I mean, these dreams would get I'm just glad I woke up. It's like, holy cow, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah, what's interesting, and especially for your listeners, there's been some books written by people who have talked about dreams in which someone told them that they have a medical condition. And I'll tell you, if it ever happens to you and it's a deceased loved one who you know comes and tells you, sorry, but you have this condition, or sorry, but you need to go to the doctor and have this looked at. If it's a deceased loved one, I myself would always go to the doctor and get that checked out. That there's some extraordinary examples of just regular dreamers meeting deceased loved ones who gave them accurate information. And oftentimes they realized that their dreams had been trying to tell them, that they had some issue that needed, some physical issue that needed attention. But it wasn't until finally a deceased loved one appeared and basically gave it to them straight. Because you're right, sometimes it comes symbolically coded and you can't figure out, what's all these strange dreams about. But then when you have a deceased loved one who just gives it to you straight, then you realize, oh yeah, I should probably have that looked at. And a lot of people have been amazed that it's helped them get a physical issue taken care of before it got too far out of control.
And could these sometimes be symbolic dreams, which, nobody's actually literally coming out and talking to you, but that, maybe you see a picture of mom and she's holding a heart in her hand. Maybe it's a Valentine's Day heart or something. And I mean, you're supposed to figure that out, I guess.
Well, so sometimes it can be symbolic, but in a lot of these experiences where a deceased loved one appears in people's dreams, oftentimes the deceased loved ones will just look them in the face and say, you have stomach cancer, or you have this issue, or you have whatever. And so you're right. Sometimes it can be symbolic, but oftentimes when a deceased loved one appears, oftentimes it's very straightforward and literal. But I did want to just mention some examples of how lucid dreamers have used lucid dreaming to apparently heal their physical bodies.
Oh, please do.
If that's all right.
Oh, yes, please.
It kind of all, for me at least, got started when my friend Ed Kellogg started investigating this. He said, well, one day he was eating a shish kebab, and he actually put the shish kebab in his mouth, and the pointed end kind of infected his tonsil because he poked his tonsil. And he said what happened is that then his tonsil got inflamed, infected. He had red streaks running up and down his throat, and he was really in a bad way. But he kind of disliked going to medical doctors. And so a couple nights later, he became lucidly aware in a dream. He remembered he wanted to heal his throat. And if I recall correctly, he projected healing light from his hands onto his throat, intending for it to be healed. And he said when he woke up, it was like 90% of the pain had gone away. And within a few hours, the red lines that had been running up and down his throat disappeared. And within 24 hours, he was basically, for all intents and purposes, totally, completely healed. And then I remember he told a friend of his about this experience, and this was a woman who had plantar warts on her feet. And these plantar warts were so painful that it actually was physically painful for the woman to walk around. And so she heard about how you could use lucid dreaming for healing. Within a week or so, she became lucidly aware. She remembered that she wanted to heal her feet. And so in her lucid dream, what she did, she put out her hands, and between her hands, she created a ball of healing light. And then she put the ball of healing light over each of her dream feet, intending for them to be healed. So that's the important thing, having that intent that they're healed. She said that when she woke up that next morning, overnight, all of her plantar warts had turned black, and within 10 days, they fell off and they never returned. And so these are just some examples of people who, consciously aware in a dream, they decided to work on healing their physical body. In this current book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, I give an example that you can also find at the magazine I co-edit at luciddreammagazine.com. But it's a woman, her name was Kaz Coronel. She had tinnitus, ringing in the ears, and she was just sick of this because it had been going on for months and months and months, and was just driving her crazy. And finally, in a lucid dream, she was finally able to stop the tinnitus from occurring. As she said, when she woke up and the ringing in the ears had stopped after months of this going on, she said she was so excited that she was jumping on the couch and running around, calling all of her friends to tell them how she'd gotten that ringing in the ears to stop. So I think this is really a profound use for lucid dreaming, and something that even medical doctors could do in, medical experiments, teach people how to lucid dream and how to heal within a lucid dream, and then have a control group of the other people who had some non-life-threatening ailment, and then see, in 6 months which group does better. I really think lucid dreaming has that capacity to make a profound difference in people's physical health.
And and that goes without saying that it almost seems like the out of body experience. I know it's not the same thing, but it's got a lot of similarities. I've heard of stories of people who have been getting operated on, and one story in particular, and the old guy, he watched it. He watched the whole surgery from up above. And apparently, he was just waiting around. He must have knew he was going to be okay, because if not, why hang around, right? So, but he talked about how the doctor was making. He wanted to ask the nurse actually why the doctor was making doing the chicken dance over him. It looked like he was like doing the chicken wing thing, and
right.
Yeah, and the nurse says, well. The doctor uses his elbows to point because he doesn't want to contaminate anything.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so how would he have known this? And he also said, why was the doctor wearing like clown shoes? Well, he wears these strange shoes when he does surgery. So, I mean, it's kind of amazing. It's not exactly the same, but I guess people are asking, is it the same as an OBE? And
that it's a good question. So normally when I talk to people, I say that an OBE, out of body experience, or sometimes people call it astral projection, and a lucid dream, to some degree they're similar, but at a certain point they're quite different. And so I'll say, kind of like how a house cat is very similar to a mountain lion at a certain point, but you don't want to bring a mountain lion home with you and let it run around the house. I mean, they share similarities, but they're different. And so one of the differences is a lot of times people report out-of-body experiences when they have some sort of trauma, like they're having a heart attack or they've had a car accident and they're floating above the wreckage, and they see the ambulance come and the whole thing, and they're just viewing it from above. And so you can see how they just suddenly transition from a waking state into this OBE state. Whereas in a lucid dream, you're having a dream, you see grandma, it suddenly occurs to you, wait a second, grandma's been dead 10 years now, and then you go, oh, this must be a dream. And then you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. And so that's how they're different, is that even though in both of them you can fly around and you can go through walls and you can see interesting stuff, a lucid dream always begins by becoming aware within a dream, and an OBE oftentimes happens when you're falling asleep. You'll hear humming or buzzing around your head or around your body, and then you'll sometimes feel yourself lift out of your body and see your bedroom from 5 feet above it, or you'll shoot out or roll out or whatever. So they have some similarities, but fundamentally they're different.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I've had an out of body experience. As far as a lucid dream, I don't remember any time ever having complete control of my dream. I remember running like hell in some of them, but I don't remember being able to say, well, this is my dream, I'm going to turn this into an ocean and a boat, and it happened. And it'd be nice to be able to control a dream like that. And I think I've had one dream where I actually was able to fly. Yeah, it was incredible. Now, I don't like heights, so I knew that was a dream.
Oh, interesting. One interesting thing besides lucid dreaming being used by some therapists to help people overcome recurring nightmares from PTSD is that a lot of lucid dreamers are reporting how they've used lucid dreams to overcome their fears and phobias. Like there was a guy who was part of a special forces unit in a foreign country, and he had a fear of heights. And the thing that he hated was sometimes he'd have to rappel down buildings, and he'd get sick before it would happen. He'd either pass out or throw up or whatever. But finally, a friend of his told him about lucid dreaming, and so in this virtual reality of the lucid dream, he began to play around with climbing down buildings in his lucid dream, knowing that he couldn't be hurt because it was just a dream. And after a while, he got so good at playing around with heights in his lucid dream that he finally overcame his fear of heights in the waking world, and now he could do all those things without any fear or any trouble. And so that's how people are using this virtual reality of lucid dreams to overcome emotional issues like phobias and anxieties and bad habits and recurring nightmares. And it's extraordinary what people are learning to do in the lucid dream state.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat just now had brought up a very interesting point about the buzzing that you had mentioned. Hearing the buzzing, and that it could be the difference in frequency from reality to whatever realm you're on. Just the interference of reality.
Yeah, it's kind of like shifting gears in a car. When you're not very good at it as a kid, when you had a stick shift, you'd often grind the gears. And sometimes that's what I wonder is when you're shifting from a physically based perception to an OBE based perception, you hear all that energy and noise because you're kind of shifting frequency, shifting gears, and moving to this other mode of operation.
Mm-hmm. Now, what effects do medications have on one's dream state? Like, especially the depression medications. I mean, they certainly must have some kind of effect. Have there been any studies like that? And if so, are they given the data on them?
Yeah, someone just asked me that. I have a place where people can ask questions at my book's website at lucidadvice.com, and a gentleman just asked me that question just earlier this week, and so I clicked around on the internet and found that it appears that certain antidepressant medications, I think they were the tricyclics, were noted for reducing dream recall in a lot of people, and so oftentimes if you look at the side effects of medications or read the label material, oftentimes it'll mention a certain side effect will be something about dreams. Now there are some medicines instead that increase dream vividness or might increase the likelihood of a nightmare. And so medications can be a powerful force that'll kind of change our dream life. But of course, you don't want to do anything without consulting your doctor. But if you look at the material, I think you can find out that most of these, it's pretty well identified which affect dreams and how they affect them.
Yeah, and I wonder if, some of these medications can affect the dream state so badly that it actually reprograms the reality of the mind. Like you wake up, you hear about these people who do crazy things. Everybody always says, "Oh, I've lived next door to him for 10 years and he's always been great and he plays with his children." And yeah, well, he just took out an entire movie theater or something like that. So, and you wonder what happens to people like this. And maybe it is these psycho meds that they take that, in that dream state gets screwed with, and before you know it, the mind gets, or the reality of the mind gets reprogrammed.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, but in any case, medications can have an effect on dream recall. But some people think about that, and what they do if they have a hard time recalling dreams. Some of them know that the vitamin B6 has been correlated with improvements in memory, or in this aiding memory. And so some people will take a B6 vitamin before they go to sleep, and see if that helps them with their dream recall. Because there's some of those things that you can do to kind of perk up your cognitive sense. And even I've found sometimes with my lucid dreaming, if I have some decaffeinated coffee in the evening, like if my wife and I are out at dinner, oftentimes that night I'll have a lucid dream. And I think what's happening is that even though they've tried to take all the caffeine out of the coffee, they still can't take all of it out. And so there's enough of a little buzz in there or something that helps me later that night become lucidly aware, because there's that little bit of caffeine still floating around this system to kind of give me a jump start and help me realize, oh, this is a dream. So there's various ways you can play with this, but again, if you are taking medication and see that it affects your dreams, I'd definitely read the label or talk to my pharmacist or medical provider.
Well, I can only account for one, and it was back in 2007. And my doctor thought that, I wanted to quit smoking, which I have done now, no thanks to them. But thanks to a heart attack, I quit smoking. But I wanted to quit, and the doctor says, we're going to put you on Chantix. And I didn't know nothing about it. And she says, well, it's very effective. That didn't tell me anything about no side effects or any of that. She said it's sometimes used for depression, and I asked if I should be concerned. And at the time, I didn't know what I know now. So, and so I started taking this stuff. And I'll tell you what, I never had more horrifying nightmares in all my life. I'm talking about I was being attacked by demons. That's how bad it was. So I quit taking it. And she said, oh, no, you should continue taking it. The gains outweigh the risk. And then it was a couple years later, I see it on TV where all the lawyers are saying, if you took Chantix, call us immediately. I'm like, oh, great.
yeah. It's sometimes I think our mind might understand that sometimes the prescribed medicines might not be the best thing in our interest, but it's interesting. I was reading a book of that a friend of mine who teaches lucid dreaming out in London. His name is Charlie Morley. In his recent book, he gives an interesting example about this young guy who heard him speak at a workshop. And this young guy, his only bad habit was that he smoked. And so he had this lucid dream, and he noticed that there was this one woman who was helping him throughout the lucid dream. And finally, he turned to that woman, and they started that conversation. And the woman said that she represented his brain and was there basically to encourage him to stop smoking. And the young guy told her, well, gosh, he'd tried to stop smoking 3 or 4 times before, but he always had cravings and would get back to smoking again. And so he asked this woman, who was a representative of his brain in the lucid dream, to see if she could do something about the cravings. And so she said she'd see what she could do. The guy reports that when he woke up, he had no interest in smoking. In fact, he said he could hang out with other smokers and still have no interest in smoking. And by the time this came out in the book, he hadn't smoked a cigarette in 6 months. He just had zero interest in it. So that's what I find interesting. As we go deeper into lucid dreaming, could we use it to help us overcome bad habits or obsessive compulsive habits. Some people wash their hands 50 times a day or have some other compulsion that they have to do. But if you could meet, the projected representative of that bad habit in your lucid dream and make some deal, like you make the cravings go away and I'll stop smoking, then you might just do some truly phenomenal things. So that's why I like lucid dreaming. When I see examples like this, it gives me a lot of hope that there's going to be a lot that science and psychology and all are going to learn how to use lucid dreaming to really help people overcome some big issues.
Yeah, now, excuse me. Bruce in our chat says he feels cheated. He says that he only has maybe a few dreams a night and he never remembers them when he wakes up.
I think part of the success of remembering your dreams is just telling yourself, making it a priority. So you put a dream journal by your bedstand, and then the first thing you got to think about when you wake up is, what was I just dreaming? You can't wonder, has somebody texted me on my cell phone, or what's going on, or is, whatever. You have to think, what was I just dreaming? And normally if you get to it within that first 5 or 10 seconds, you can recapture the dream. But it takes a while. It takes a while, Bruce, to develop that habit. But I'm sure you can do it if you give it a try.
Now, what are dream signs? I was reading on your site about, or I've seen it come up a couple times about dream signs. So what are they and how are they useful?
Yeah. So what some people talk about dream signs, it's kind of a idea that Stephen LaBerge, who's kind of one of the early researchers on lucid dreaming, came up with. And so to him, a dream sign was something unusual that would spark your awareness to make you question if this was a dream. So for example, deceased people might be a dream sign. If you see someone who's deceased, it ought to be a dream sign that makes you think, wait a second, how can I be seeing this person? I attended their funeral 5 years ago. Oh, this must be a dream. So a deceased person would be a dream sign. Or if you looked at somebody and they had 4 arms, a body that's misshapen like that ought to be a dream sign that, oh, this is a dream. So those kind of impossible situations, those kind of things like that should be a dream sign to help you become consciously aware. And that's why I kind of like this technique that basically I developed back in 1975 of finding my hands in the dream state, or using my hands as a dream sign to help me become lucidly aware. Because when your hands pop in front of you and you've told yourself, for 5 minutes every night before you go to sleep, tonight in my dreams when I see my hands, I'll realize I'm dreaming. I mean, the first thought in your mind is you see those hands and you think, that's your sign. That's the dream sign that informs you this is a dream. And so that's how I use that technique to kind of create a dream sign. But yeah, that's what people mean when they talk about dream signs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. I guess hands would work, but what about I guess I'm thinking like when I know I have to get up bright and early in the morning, and it's I'll always beat the alarm clock by a minute or two. I'll always wake up on time, but if I don't set that alarm, I'll oversleep.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my book, I talk about the power of suggestion, and for some people, you want to get to the airport on time, so you set the alarm for 4 a.m, and then you find out that you wake up exactly 1 minute before your alarm rings, because your alarm is probably 1 minute off, and so that makes you realize that inside of us, we have kind of a larger awareness or some kind of awareness that knows exactly when 4 a.m. is. And if we tell it we want to wake up at 4 a.m., it'll wake us up exactly at 4 a.m. So you can use that in your lucid dreaming practice by suggesting something like this would be a suggestion. So tonight in my dreams, there'll be a part of me that will remain aware, and that part of me will inform me when I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, some part of me will stay aware, and that part will inform me when I'm dreaming. So if you have this ability like you have, Michael, of, waking up exactly at 4 and then the alarm rings a minute later, there's some part of you that's aware. And so if you make that suggestion, tonight in my dreams, some part of me will remain aware and will inform me when I'm dreaming and help me become lucidly aware, then there's a good chance that you can get that to work. Because if it works for waking up at 4 a.m., it can also work for prompting you into lucid awareness.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try that. I really haven't experimented too much when I've gone to sleep. So I think that tonight I'll definitely give it a shot and see what happens.
Good. Well, yeah, it's surprising. A lot of times I'll get emails from people the day after they hear me on the radio, and that night there's something I talked about that got them so interested and curious that, boom, something happened and they became lucidly aware. So on any given night, it can happen. That's the beauty of it.
One of the listeners says, try meditating during a dream. Now, I guess that would be the ultimate meditation.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, in this new book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, it's written by myself and my co-author, Caroline McCready. So it's by Robert Wagner and Caroline McCready. We have an entire chapter on meditating in lucid dreams. And I'll tell you, if you want to have a peak experience, there's that psychologist, Abraham Maslow, who had his Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And they talk about the very top was the peak experience. If you want to have a peak experience, in your next lucid dream, when you become consciously aware and stabilized lucid dream, stop what you're doing and begin to meditate. And I'll tell you, people have had profound experiences in a matter of a few seconds of just incredible sense of transcendence and oneness and kind of all-encompassing, knowledge or whatever. It's utterly profound what can happen when you meditate in a lucid dream. But one thing we realized as we wrote the chapter is when you say meditate, that means different things to different people. I mean, for some people it means, chanting a mantra or chanting a sound, and for some it's visualizing, and for some it's paying attention to your breath. And so it varies according to how people approach it. But your person is right. Meditating within a lucid dream can be an utterly profound experience. And there's also some other spiritual practices that you can do in a lucid dream, and they're much more powerful in the lucid dream state, just incredibly more powerful.
Man, I get to that point, I might not want to come back. That could be dangerous.
What's interesting, sometimes in these lucid dreams, and I talk about this in the book, how after 10 years of lucid dreaming, I realized that there was an awareness behind the dream. And so in a lot of lucid dreams, I'll ignore the dream figures, I'll ignore the dream setting, and I'll just shout out questions to that awareness behind the dream. So if I became lucidly aware, I could shout out, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And then the entire lucid dream would change, and I'd be seeing something that was important for me to see. Or I remember I gave a talk in London, and I suggested to people, I told them, look, when you become lucid, don't try to find God, because God is too big of a concept and it'll just blow all your fuses. I mean, you're a 100-watt bulb, and God's a 1,000,000-watt bulb, and it'll just, you just can't deal with it. But if you want to do something spiritual, when you become lucidly aware, just ignore the dream figures and just shout out to that larger awareness. It's a non-visible larger awareness. Just shout out, hey, let me experience unconditional love. That's all you have to do. I came back to London about 6 months later to give another talk, and a woman told me that she had heard me earlier. She did that in a lucid dream. She said the resulting experience was so powerful, she said that when she woke up from that lucid dream, she said she cried tears of joy for 15 minutes. She said she had never experienced such a powerful sense of unconditional love. She said it was like the whole concept just came at her, at 100%, and she just felt it, in the very fibers of her being. She said it was truly, truly amazing. So that's why, I've written this book. I've been lucid dreaming for 40 years. I've played around with a lot of these things. I've worked with a lot of other lucid dreamers, and I'm giving people some of the best techniques and some of the best approaches that they can really use, not only to kind of blow their mind, but also expand their mind and kind of see how when you're consciously aware at that deep level, you're really in touch with some pretty amazing, powerful concepts and some amazing and powerful, knowing and creativity. But you have to learn how to lucid dream and how to stabilize that lucid dream before you can get to that place.
All right. And somebody asked, speaking of dangerous, can a lucid dream be dangerous? I guess what they're asking is, if you get killed in your dream, are you dead?
Yeah, really. You got to be careful there. When I go out and I'll give some talks at universities and colleges, as well as at other workshops and places and conferences and all. But when I talk to a bunch of college students, normally what I tell them when they ask this kind of question is I say, look, if you can't handle waking reality, if waking reality is too much for you, don't try to become a lucid dreamer. Don't get involved in lucid dreaming. Don't get involved in lucid dreaming until you feel comfortable in your waking reality. Because if you can't handle waking reality, then that probably means you're either depressed or suicidal or something like that. And if you become lucidly aware in a lucid dream, you'll probably just meet that kind of projected energy of your depression or whatever, and it'll probably just, scare you or something. So that's my basic caution is I honestly don't think there's too much to worry about, but if you can't handle waking reality, then I just don't think a person should go there. It's just, and especially for anyone who has any sort of, if you can't figure out when you're in waking reality, if you get confused about what is waking reality and what isn't, then you also shouldn't get involved in lucid dreaming because, again, becoming consciously aware in a dream state is a different kind of experience, and you have to be a pretty well-focused person and have a good sense of reality in order to explore it in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I tell people that about this show too. If you can't handle reality, then it's probably best to just turn the station or go to another show. Because, while we may talk about dreaming one night we might talk about UFOs, and at some point you always, no matter what you talk about, you always get somebody who don't like it. And so it's, my motto is, you can't make everybody happy, so why try? So
exactly. And that's one thing, oftentimes when you're consciously aware in a lucid dream, sometimes you interact with what Carl Jung called the shadow. And so the shadow is what he called the denied, ignored, repressed aspects of the self that oftentimes we don't want to face. And so oftentimes the shadow is what's behind us, what we're not looking at, what we're not facing. And so one thing I always encourage people, in a lucid dream, if you become consciously aware and there's something hostile or angry, like if you see a big black Rottweiler, snarling at you in a lucid dream, what I suggest to them is project love and compassion onto it from your heart. And oftentimes in this mentally responsive realm of lucid dreams, when you project love and compassion onto something angry, then oftentimes it'll shrink down into a poodle or something like that. and it's the same way with, witches or aliens or whatever. in a lucid dream, if they're a thought form, if they're a projection of your mind, and instead of freaking out and getting fearful or angry or trying to fight them or whatever, if you do the opposite thing and just project love and compassion on them, oftentimes you'll watch as they change, and then you realize that, oh, they're my own projected energy, and that's why when I project this energy of love on them, that's why they change. And so there's a lot to learn, and again, I give these tips and techniques in this new book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, because I want people to have a good experience, to know how deep they can take it, and also know how to respond when things don't seem to make sense, because that happens on occasion, and so if you have some good advice, you'll make the best of it.
Yeah, and sometimes that whole shining love on, and sometimes that works on a person too. In reality,
Yeah,
I've had
yeah,
people who are mad, and you talk really, you just give them love. Don't get angry. Don't feed the anger, and boy, it turns around quick sometimes.
It's interesting. A few years ago, I was trying to go down to Charlotte, North Carolina to do some video work for this online workshop group that I do with a group called glidewing.com. And so the first night at 4 a.m, the phone rang, and it was a certain airline telling me my flight had been canceled because of bad weather. And so they booked me on the next day at the same time. And so I decided to drive down to an airport hotel so I could just, hop out of bed and get to the airport real quick. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang again and said, "Your flight's been canceled again." And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I went back to sleep. And about an hour later, when I was waking up, as I was waking up, I heard my deceased brother, David. I heard him say, just as clearly as you and I talking, "Just be extra nice." And I woke up and I thought, what was that? My deceased brother saying, "Just be extra nice." And so I got dressed and I went to the airport, and, as soon as I got there, there were just long lines of angry people whose, vacations to Baja and Cancun were being ruined. And as I stood there in line, trying to get up to the agent, trying to figure out if I'm ever going to get to North Carolina, it occurred to me that that's what my brother was trying to tell me, just be extra nice. And so I got up to the front, and even though I was on a frequent flyer ticket, so I'm kind of the lowest of the low, I got up there and I was just extra nice to the check-in person, and she sat there for 5 minutes and booked me a flight to Charlotte, North Carolina. I couldn't believe it. I got there at a great time, and I was just amazed because there were so many angry people around me, but I just didn't buy into the anger. I decided to just be extra nice and kind of use that power of compassion and love, and it all worked out.
Yeah, the energy around a person could influence them. It really can. I mean, I've gone in rooms with people who have sucked me dry energy, but then I've gone. You could feel it. You could feel it in the air if it's not a good situation or what have you. But you walk in a room where everybody's having a drink and they're all laughing and playing music and everyone's happy, and it rubs off on you. So.
Oh yeah, I was given a talk in Chicago one time, and a woman brought up a lucid dream, and in this lucid dream, she realized that it was the recurring nightmare that she's being chased by the monster, and all of a sudden she thought, wait a second, this is a dream. It only happens, when I'm dreaming, and so she became lucid at that moment, and she decided to face the monster. And she said she turned around, and here was this giant, ugly monster. It looked bad and smelled bad. But then as she looked at it, she remembered that at church that Sunday, the pastor said, we should even love those who hate us. And so she decided that she was going to love the monster. And she said as soon as she began to love the monster, basically the monster kind of blew up as a ball of light. And she said it was incredibly beautiful. And when she woke up, she said she finally understood what that nightmare figure was all about and how it related to her life. But as soon as she resolved that nightmare, and had kind of overcome it with love, she said it resolved the issue for her, and she kind of changed her as a person too.
Incredible. Yeah, Dreams could be good. A lot of them, they could do good things for you. Just, I think if you're supposed to remember it, I think I don't know. I kind of think you will. If it's something that really hits home to you, and the message is clear, I think you're gonna wake up, and if it scares you enough, you're definitely gonna remember it. I think, but what?
Yeah,
Oh, go
go ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was going to say that sometimes people ask me about recurring dreams and what I think about that. And and kind of the analogy I use is like when you're on the computer and you're filling out some computer form. If you don't fill out everything that the computer wants on that form, it won't let you go to the next page. It'll just keep bouncing you back to that form until you fill it out properly, and then it'll let you move on. And that's what I kind of think recurring dreams are. They're kind of there's some issue, something going on that keeps presenting itself, but in the dream we don't respond in such a way that we get to move forward. But once we do respond in a new way, in a creative way, somehow that satisfies, the psyche, and then we get to move forward and the recurring dreams stop. But if you're having a recurring dream, you got to think, how could I respond differently to that recurring dream? I mean, running away in fear isn't a good response, or fighting it probably isn't a good response. What would be a creative way of responding that could resolve it? And when you try that creative way, 9 times out of 10, I think it's going to resolve the issue and allow you to move forward.
And I just read today, oh, I forget exactly where it was sent to me in my email, but I read today about, they say that these smartphones, people are using these smartphones and it's actually hurts their memory for dreams. They actually said that it affects the technology basically is affecting their ability to remember their dreams and memory and reality as well. So I guess my question would be: do you know of studies or anything along that line that shows that technology is available to assist or hurt, your ability to lucid dream or remember your dreams?
Yeah, technology is kind of a double-edged sword. There's various apps, if you look around, that some apps will help you do reality checks, and some apps will give you tips on, lucid dreaming, or some apps will, start to vibrate in the middle of the night, and maybe you can use that as a dream sign to become lucidly aware. So there are some apps like that, and sometimes people use their cell phone to record their dreams in a voice-activated recorder, in the middle of the night. But there is kind of the downside of technology, which, a lot of people and some of my nieces and nephews, the first thing they do when they wake up is they grab their cell phone to see if anybody's been texting them or if there's anything, happening that they should know about. And as we've talked about, the first thing you got to do when you wake up, if you want to be a good lucid dreamer and get in the game, the first thing you got to do is think, what was I just dreaming? Because if you get involved in the cell phone, then the dream memory is going to disappear. So there's good points and bad points, and hopefully people can use technology for the good stuff and let the bad stuff slide.
All right, we're gonna take one last break here, Robert. Sites or anything that you want to plug, you want people to go check out, by all means, throw it out there.
Yeah, so my book website is lucidadvice.com, and that's where you can see my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, which is for more advanced lucid dreamers. And that book was so popular, it's in its 9th printing. It actually sells better now than when it came out years ago. And then you can also see our new book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, and that's for beginning and intermediate lucid dreamers. Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple. So that's at lucidadvice.com. Also, I co-edit a magazine called The Lucid Dreaming Experience, which if you go to luciddreammagazine.com, you can read some of the articles. There's some great articles about healing and lucid dreams and things like that, and read the last issue. And even submit your own lucid dreams if you want to see your lucid dream get published. But I did want to say that since you folks are out in New Jersey, that here on April 25th, 2015, I'll be in New York City giving a talk at the International Association for the Study of Dreams regional event, and that'll be an all-day event on Saturday, April 25th. And so people are certainly welcome to that. They're going to have some extraordinary presenters give talks there, and I'll definitely be there. Looking forward to meeting people and giving talks as well.
All right, great. Now, here's a question. This one's coming from I guess a Lala, I think is what that says. Are there any kind of supplements or teas or anything like that that can assist in lucid dreaming?
Yeah, so this is kind of a interesting area. The only one that I'm aware of that's been basically scientifically researched is one called galantamine. So that's like galantamine. And so it's a native herb that comes from a certain species of lily. And it's a pretty powerful herb, though, this galantamine. So it's used to help Alzheimer's patients focus on this here and now. But what they realize that if you would take a galantamine herbal substance, after you've been asleep for 4 or 5 hours, so you don't want to take it as you go to sleep. You want to go to sleep and then wake up 4 or 5 hours later and take it. That oftentimes that would help some people have a lucid dream. But again, it is a chemically influenced lucid dream, so it's a little bit different than a normal lucid dream. But as for teas and some of these other things, mugwort and stuff will give you vivid dreams, but they won't be lucid dreams. The only thing that I know that might help a person is this galantamine. But again, even if you become lucid, if you don't know what to do when you become lucid, what's the point? And that's why you still have to have the knowledge base, that's in this new book of mine, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple. And so, I think Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. You have to prepare your mind. You have to know how to respond when you become consciously aware in the dream state, because certain things will help and certain things will not help, and you got to know how to respond.
Yeah, and I seen in a comment section somewhere today, because we got the topic, so I look around, see what people are saying, and one guy left a comment and said something about a hallucinogenic, and I'm thinking, yeah, but that's not dreaming. I mean, that might feel like a dream, but
yeah, and that's some of these chemical experiences, they might be similar, but they're a chemical experience. A real lucid dream, when you're consciously aware within a dream, it's an extraordinary experience just in and of itself. And so, but galantamine is the only substance that's been shown. But it's a powerful thing, and so if you're a petite young woman taking galantamine, don't take the whole pill. For goodness sakes, just take half of it or something like that, because it's a powerful herb. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Okay. And Lisa, she asked. Now this question could be maybe similar to Bruce's. How can I prevent waking up as soon as I become lucid? Well, I guess it's a little different then.
Yeah, no, and Lisa has a great point, because that's the number one complaint of beginning lucid dreamers. Oftentimes what happens is you get so excited when you become lucidly aware. So, you might be having a dream and see Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and all of a sudden you think, wait a second, what are they doing, in my hometown? And if you get too excited at that moment, you can pop out of the lucid dream. So what I encourage people, the first thing, you have to modulate your emotions. So you can tell yourself mentally to calm down. You can look at something boring. Don't look at Brad Pitt and Angelina. Look at your hands or look down at the floor and that's boring enough that it reduces your excitement. The other thing is sometimes when people become lucidly aware, they'll stare at something fixedly for too long because they won't know what to do. They'll just look at Brad Pitt, and you've got to move your eyes in a lucid dream. You can't stare at something for more than 5 or 6 seconds, otherwise the lucid dream will get shaky and will collapse. So look away every now and then look back at whatever you want to look at, but keep your eyes moving. Then the other thing, oftentimes it helps to enhance your awareness. So after you've modulated your emotions, you might want to rub your hands together to kind of get that kinesthetic, that physical sense going of your hands rubbing together. You might want to touch something to kind of ground yourself in that setting. If it seems kind of dark or anything, you might want to shout out greater clarity now or more awareness now. Because oftentimes when you do that in a lucid dream, when you shout out more awareness now, it'll be like someone turns up the lights, without you saying turn up the lights. It's like saying greater awareness means the lights come up, and that'll get you better focus. But the most difficult thing, Michael, is maintaining your focus. So you've modulated your emotions, you've enhanced your awareness, but then you've got to be engaged in the lucid dream. And so after 5 or 6 minutes, you might see something so exciting that you forget it's a dream, and you'll return to regular dreaming. And so in our new book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, we give a lot of tips and techniques on how you can maintain your awareness so you can have a long lucid dream. But Lisa's right. Just becoming lucidly aware, that's just got you into the doorway. You still got to know how to act once you become lucidly aware, because otherwise you're going to pop right out.
Yeah, that's just getting the foot in the door. You still got to get the rest of you in there. Exactly. Surf is in our late night in the Midlands.com chat, and he asked, what about 2-part dreams where you have one night you'll have this dream and it abruptly ends maybe, and then the next night you have the part 2 to it.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing. Some people have what we call serial dreams, and that's SERIAL, serial, like an installment in a magazine, night after night. They'll keep dreaming a little bit of it forward. I remember reading a historical account where Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he said that's how the book Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde came to him. It was in a series of dreams, and the next night's dream would pick up where the previous night's dream had ended, and it went on that way for a period of time, and then he had the whole novel of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it suggests to me that there's something that our larger awareness, the psyche, however you want to think about it, wants to get across to us, and if they can't fit it into one night's dreams, it's going to be waiting for you the next night.
Okay. We got a question here from Tom, and he says, is it true that we can't invent new faces, and that basically when you see people in your dreams, it's always going to be faces that you know from the past?
Tom, I don't think so, Tom. I would say you can invent new faces. In fact, if you want to shock yourself in a lucid dream, look in a mirror in a lucid dream. About half the time, you won't see Tom looking back at you. You'll see, a woman dressed up in 18th century French clothing, or a Chinese guy from a small village or something. It's shocking for lucid dreamers when you look into a mirror and you don't see yourself in the reflection. So I think you can invent new faces, and the idea that you can't, I just have to say that to me that's incorrect.
All right. And Lee asked, he says, is it possible to meet people in your dreams? I'm going to try to read this best I can. And that the two seem to have a separate self-awareness from that dream? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I can give you an amazing example, and it's in my first book, Lucid Dreaming: Gateway to the Inner Self, and that's a book for more advanced people. But I tell the story of one night I was having a lucid dream. I was in a restaurant, and then through the door walks my friend Maureen, and I run up to her and I go, Mo, this is a dream. Do you know we're dreaming? And here's what was interesting, Michael. She had rapid eye movement. I could see her eyes were moving back and forth, and her head was kind of lifting, this way and that way, like she was kind of like a drunken sailor or something. So it was like she had rapid eye movement, and she couldn't focus in my dream. And so then I thought, well, I'm lucidly aware. So I grabbed her around the waist and I started levitating. I started floating, and I said, look, Mo, we're floating. This is a lucid dream. But still her eyes had rapid eye movement, and her head was kind of flopping around. And I was thinking, how can I convince her that this is a dream? So I couldn't think of anything more. But what I did, I put my fingers in a peace sign, and I just shoved it in her face. And I said, Mo, do you see this peace sign? You can use it as a symbol to help you become lucidly aware anytime you want. And that was the end of the lucid dream, and I woke up. So I live in the Midwest, and Mo lives out in the San Francisco Bay Area. I thought the next day she'd give me a call or send me an email or something about it, but she didn't. Anyway, 3 months later, I was out in San Francisco on a business trip, and I realized I had some spare time, and so I called up Mo and asked her if she wanted to have lunch with me, and she told me where to meet her in Burlingame, California. And so I was standing outside of the cafe. And so this is waking reality now. I'm standing outside of the cafe. It's 12 noon. Here comes Mo walking down the sidewalk. She comes right up to me, and she puts her fingers in a peace sign and shoves it in my face. And I looked at her and I said, Mo, why are you doing that? And she says, I don't know. I just felt like it. So she did the exact thing to me that I did to her in that lucid dream. At the end of it, I shoved a peace sign in her face and told her she could use it as a symbol to become lucidly aware. And 3 months later, I hadn't told any of my friends, hadn't told her. She reenacted that lucid dream, at 12 noon on a sidewalk in Burlingame, California. So to me, that suggests that somehow she had entered my lucid dream, even though because she had this rapid eye movement and this floppy head, she was still involved in her dream experience. And but somehow I got across that information that this peace sign was important to help you become lucidly aware. But anyway, in that first book, Lucid Dreaming: Gateway to the Inner Self, I have a whole chapter on experimenting with this idea of mutual lucid dreams. And, I give some of the successful accounts of doing some experiments with some friends of mine. It's a tough thing to do, though. I mean, you have to be a really proficient lucid dreamer to even give it a try, but I do think it's possible.
All right, great. And we've had several, and they're not calling in tonight, but they're certainly asking questions, and I'm going to assume that this is a legitimate question. But Truther asked, "Does Asperger's syndrome affect the way you sleep, dream, and even lucid dream?"
Boy, that's a good question. I honestly don't know how to answer that one.
I don't either.
But I assume it might have some change, but it might help. It might not be helpful. I just don't know.
Okay. Do they know of any diseases that might affect it? And but I guess kind of like a near-death experience type thing where you can have that type of lucid dream because maybe, I don't know, you've got a terminal disease or something.
Well, I realized one thing. Once I was giving a talk, and a woman from Toledo, Ohio came up to me. She was an elderly woman, and she goes, I do what you're talking about. And I said, lucid dream? And she says, well, I do it when I have narcoleptic seizures. She said that she's had narcolepsy since she was a teenager. And so she'll spontaneously fall asleep, when she gets surprised or something. And she says that basically her body falls to the ground asleep, but she's kind of in this lucid dream state. And I ask her, well, what do you do? And she says, well, that's the thing. I never realized I could do anything. So I just wait there, hoping that my body hasn't hurt itself as it fell, and knowing that, someone will eventually, get me up and, get me reconnected with my body, basically. And so I do wonder if people who have narcolepsy as a genetic possibility in their genetic expression of their family might have a tendency to lucid dream more so than others.
I see. Okay. And JH asked, and I know that you've touched on this already, but she asked about reoccurring dreams. Why do they happen? I guess.
Yeah. So some of them, are the ones like we find ourselves, we're back at school, we're going to the exam, we realize that we're in our underwear and we don't know where the exam is taking place. I mean, and so if you think of what is the feeling when that occurs, and I feel unprepared, or I feel like I don't know where I'm going or don't know what I'm doing. When you look at what's going on in my current life where I feel unprepared, normally you can realize that, I haven't prepared at all for this thing. And so we have that recurring dream whenever in our life we feel unprepared. And so we have that kind of recurring dream. But if you have that other recurring dream that happens almost every night, whether it's like a recurring nightmare from PTSD or something, it's the one that's waiting for a creative response. If you give it a new creative response, then that recurring nightmare will finally cease. But it's waiting for the proper response, and hopefully a response with love and compassion or brilliance in it, and that'll resolve it, and you'll move forward.
All right. Steve wants to know if it's possible to talk or communicate with his unconscious in a lucid dream. Now, I will say this, that I think that has something to do with that old thing I was talking about earlier, and that's, going to bed and having this big problem on your mind, weighing you down, and then you go to sleep, you wake up, and it's solved. I think somehow, the unconscious comes in to play there, but he's not asking me. He's asking you. So.
Yeah. So in a general sense, incubating an idea and getting it resolved in a dream, like you're talking about, it seems like a response. But what I suggest to people in both of my books is become consciously aware, ignore the dream figures, and just make requests of the larger awareness behind the dream. Just shout out, hey, show me something important for me to see, and then see what happens. Oftentimes the entire dream will change and something incredible will happen. Because think of, in a normal lucid dream, we'll use intent. Like if I become lucidly aware and I look at a garage, I'll tell myself, when I walk into that garage, I want to see a red Ferrari. And so I open up the garage door, and what's there? A red Ferrari, because I know my mind has kind of created it. So that's kind of limited intent. Unlimited intent or open intent is when you shout out a question that you don't know the answer to. Show me something important for me to see. Let me experience unconditional love. Oftentimes the resulting experience will be so powerful, it'll utterly blow your mind. So that's why I called my first book Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self. I think lucid dreaming allows us to communicate with our larger awareness, and in both of these books, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple and Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, I give lots of examples of that, and even examples where you make a request and that larger awareness responds that your question makes no sense. Like one woman, she asked to see the beginning and end of the universe, and this non-visible voice responded, the universe has no beginning or end. The universe is an everlasting cycle. And so it's just not, you're communicating with a distinct awareness. It's just not some echo. It's just not your subconscious mind. You're dealing with something, your larger you, your larger self with a capital S.
So then, if we, this is me now coming from me. So then, if we were to see a loved one in, say, a dream, we were to connect with a deceased loved one. Would that be our mind projecting that, or would our mind actually be being used by that entity as a portal to meet us there? I mean, I know it's
Yeah,
complicated questions, but
you know, well, once I was home at Christmas and met one of my nieces who's about 20 years old, and I asked her if she'd ever had any lucid dreams, and she said, oh, she'd had about 15 or 20, but they didn't mean anything. And I was really surprised she said that. I told her, I go, look, if you want to find out if lucid dreams have meaning, the next time you become aware, just shout out, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And so about a month later, she called me up. She said that night she was being chased by a lion in Kansas City, and she hid behind a rock. The lion was jumping over the rock to get her, and then she realized, wait a second, lions don't run free in Kansas City. This must be a dream. And so she shouted out, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And all of a sudden, this long blue hallway appeared, and at the end of it was a little white-haired lady. She goes down there, and the white-haired lady is her deceased great-grandmother, who passed away when I think she was like 5 years old or something, so she really didn't know her very well. And so they had this conversation, and at the end of it, the grandmother insisted that my niece tell her mother to remember the back room in Grandma's house. And my niece asked the great-grandmother, why is this important? And she said, just tell her, remember the back room in Grandma's house. She called me up in the morning and she asked me what to do. And I said, you're the one who wonder if lucid dreams have meaning. You got to call up your mom and find out what's the deal with the back room in great-grandma's house. She called up her mom. Her mom burst into tears. Her mom said the happiest moments of her life occurred in the back room of great-grandma's house, because every Saturday, great-grandma would have them come over and they could dress up as kings and queens and all, and there were no rules in the back room of great-grandma's house. And so, that would give you this kind of idea that, my niece communicated with her deceased great-grandmother and got information that she wasn't aware of. And so it would suggest that a lot of lucid dreamers come to this conclusion after a lot of these encounters, when they get information that they're not consciously aware of, but then they verify it when they wake up, they're like stunned. It kind of gives them a new view that, maybe some part of awareness survives physical death, and also, so yeah, it can be pretty powerful when you have these moments.
yeah, in my own situation, I know that shortly after my mother had passed away, I had a dream. It's the only dream I've ever had like this, where her and I actually relived an entire day that we had together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, relived the entire day. I mean, I was actually, when I woke up, I was ready to go back to bed. I mean, I literally was exhausted from the day. I mean, every single detail, and it was one of those days that otherwise I would have never thought of. But
Wow.
but yeah, relived the whole thing, and so you gotta wonder: did they connect with you? Did they try to give you closure that way? It's just amazing.
Yeah, I gave an online workshop and met a lucid dreamer there who told me just an incredible experience. She said in her extended family, she knew there was some family secret, but her parents would never tell her what it is, and she could tell there was a family secret because at family gatherings, part of the family would barely speak to each other. And so she thought about that and thought about it, but she could never figure it out. One night, she became lucidly aware when she saw her deceased uncle. And her deceased uncle told her that if you want to find out what the family secret is, you got to go to the county courthouse, you got to go up to this particular room, and then you've got to ask for this file. And he gave her like a number, like 96 XY 321. She said a week later, she went to the county courthouse, went up to that room, asked for the file, and they gave her a file which was the file that had the family legal battle from about 40 years earlier of some land sale when they kind of broke up the family farm. And she said she was stunned to read all the infighting, this whole giant family legal battle. But when you get information like that, that's just so specific. It's down to a specific file in a specific courthouse. I mean, that's just not something you overhear when you were a little kid. That makes me think that the deceased uncle really wanted her to resolve this and gave her the information.
Yeah. Okay. And now here's another one that we did cover this, but Sherry asked if she says she hears that if you die in your dream, then you won't wake up. And again, we did touch on that, but if you want to briefly touch on that again, you can.
Yeah, Sherry, I'll tell you, there's a lot of lucid dreamers who have tried that, and they always manage to wake up the next day and write about it in their dream journal. So I don't think you have anything to be concerned about there.
Okay, she says sorry, and she says here's one more question: can I use lucid dreams to induce my OBEs?
I just finished writing a chapter for a book on that very same subject, and so here's a hint for you. If you become lucidly aware and want to have an OBE, then just announce, now I want to experience the next level, or now take me to the next form. And normally when I shout that out in the lucid dream state, then suddenly the whole thing will change. I'll find myself somewhere in my house in an OBE state and can fly around the neighborhood in an OBE state. And so that's one way of doing it. Just announce, now let me experience the next form, or now take me to the next form.
All right. And we've just got a few more questions here from people, and then I'll give you the platform to get out whatever you'd like tonight. Ryan has a couple questions. He says, is it possible to program your dream? Well, I guess pretty much, put in what you want that night. Computer, give me a hot lady in the beach, I guess.
Yeah. Ryan, I think really what I want people to take away is that when you become consciously aware in a lucid dream, you're relating to the dream. You're relating to the dream figures. You're relating to the larger awareness. It's a relationship. It's not about controlling. It's not like some computer, a holodeck or something. You can influence it. You can manipulate it. You can do all that, but you don't control it. And so, here's an example. You go up to a dream figure and you say, "Hey, do you know I'm dreaming you?" And then the dream figure responds, "How do you know I'm not dreaming you?" And then you respond, "Well, look, I can fly." And then the dream figure says, "Well, look, I can fly too." And so everything that you can do, that very conscious dream figure can do the same thing. And when you wake up from that kind of lucid dream, you'll wonder who's dreaming the dream. Whose lucid dream were you in?
Ooh, that's the dream matrix.
Yeah, because it's about a relationship. It's about relating, and that's what my books are trying to change. It's not about controlling programming. It's about learning how to relate to the larger awareness and also the dream figures and other awarenesses within the dream.
All right. Ryan also asks if you could feel pain in your lucid dreams. Now, I did mention a dream that I had that I did feel pain. I don't know how lucid the dream was, but I felt the pain. So can you feel pain in your lucid dreams?
Yeah, you can. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like hypnosis. If you expect to feel pain, you'll feel pain. But if you expect in the lucid dream to take a hatchet and chop off your hand and feel no pain, you will not feel any pain. And so that's where you have to realize, and that's what I talk about in both of my books, the reality creating aspects of the expectation effect, that you get what you expect to the degree that you expect it at that moment, the importance of belief and focus and intent and will and all these things. Because once you understand how to manipulate your mind, then you'll be much, much better at manipulating the lucid dream. And that's why you'll learn how to play with these things like expectation. If you want to feel pain, you can. If you don't want to feel pain, you don't have to.
See, now in my case, I think I expected to feel pain, and that's probably
Exactly.
why I did.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, all right. And Michael asks, what level of consciousness do you have in a lucid dream? Like, where are you consciously during a lucid dream?
Right. So, so there's various ways of thinking about that. Some people would say, well, you're in the subconscious. Okay. Some people would say you're in the unconscious. Some people would say, no, you're in fourth stage REM, and you're having these kind of, brainwave activity, and they'll give you kind of the neurological place where you are. But when you're in a lucid dream, consciously aware, you're in a unique hybrid state of consciousness, and that's what some of those researchers I was talking about who put the 19-channel EEG on people's head. They said that the dreaming part of the brain was active, but also parts of the frontal lateral cortex, the cerebral cortex were active. And so it's a hybrid state where the dreaming part of the brain's active, but parts of the aware brain are active. So it's a unique state, and it's definitely one worth experiencing. It'll totally blow people's minds.
All right. And, Donna brings up a very interesting, I guess, question here, because I've had this happen too, but where you'll be dozing off or even in a sound sleep and you'll hear a very loud noise or you'll hear somebody yell. I mean, I've heard somebody yell like, hey, real loud, and I open my eyes and look and there's nobody there.
Yeah. There's a thing we call hypnagogia, and so that's like hypnos, and gogia is like gate, so it's like the gate of sleep. And so oftentimes when we're falling asleep, we'll have these hypnagogic experiences. We'll hear conversations, we'll hear voices, sometimes our foot will jerk as we're kind of stepping down or whatever, or we'll see lights in front of our eyes. And so these are all hypnagogic experiences that are quite common.
All right, Robert, that's it for listeners' questions, and they wrote, but no calls. Well, that's okay though. So what I'd like to do is give you the floor, and if there's anything that you'd like to get out that you have not, or stuff that you want to get out there that's coming up, if you want to go over any of that again, by all means, go ahead. And let me just say thank you so much for being a guest tonight. This has been a great conversation, and I'm going to keep you linked up over on latenightinthemidlands.com.
Well, thanks, Michael. It's been great, and I appreciate all the great questions too. These are really great. I think one important point to get across is that lucid dreaming, because it's been scientifically validated, I think this is going to be a new way of kind of creating a bridge between science and spirituality, or science and psychic experience. Because all these things we've been talking about, whether it's interacting with the deceased or physical healing or emotional healing or accessing your inner awareness, someday in the future here, scientists are finally going to get to the point where they begin to experiment in lucid dreams with all of this. In a lucid dream, can you get information outside of your own knowing, like clairvoyant information? In a lucid dream, can you experimentally get information outside of time? And that, in a lucid dream, can you heal yourself? In a lucid dream, can you heal another person? I think all of these are going to be scientifically investigated because lucid dreaming allows for experimentation. And there's been a lot of experiments, but most of them are just on the simple kind of things and aren't getting to these deeper issues. So lucid dreaming represents an incredible bridge. It's a revolutionary tool to explore the psyche, to come to know yourself, to work through your own issues, to become the most fulfilled, creative person that you possibly can. And so that's why I wrote these books. My first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, it's really a book for advanced lucid dreamers. Again, it's in its 9th printing. That's how well respected it's become in the lucid dreaming community. And then I wrote a book for beginners and intermediate lucid dreamers called Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple. So you can check it out at lucidadvice.com. Read it, think about it. I have a place there where people can ask questions, and I'm happy to help people because I've dedicated the rest of my life to basically pushing lucid dreaming, to helping people work through it, and to become the best lucid dreamers they can. So again, the website's lucidadvice.com, or also you can sign up for our free online magazine, luciddreammagazine.com. And Michael, I really appreciate it, and want to send lucid wishes to everyone out there.
All right, and let's just hope that whoever's dreaming about us right now doesn't wake up.
When they wake up, I think it might be all over. So anyway, Michael, it's been a lot of fun talking with you.
All right, thank you so much, and have a great night.
Okay,
right,
super.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you. Bye.
All right, everybody. Robert Wagner and
techniques that have been shown to effectively induce lucid dreams. But also, I talk about how to stabilize the lucid dream, because once you become consciously aware in a dream, it doesn't mean that it's just going to be a steady state from there on. A lot of people realize that if you get too excited during the lucid dream, you're going to pop out, and there's other things that you have to know in order to stabilize the dream. And then finally, it's how to manipulate within the lucid dream. Because in some ways, you're really not manipulating the dream so much as you're manipulating your mind. And so you have to realize these psychological abilities that you have to kind of manipulate the experience towards your own best end. But that's why I wrote this new book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple. I just wanted to make it very clear for people, wanted to give them everything that I'd learned in my 40 years of lucid dreaming.
Fantastic. And where can they get it? The book, that is.
They can always go to their local bookstore and support their local bookstore. It's Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple by Robert Wagner. Also, you can find it on the Apple's iTunes iBook store, Amazon, and it's also in MP3 and CD versions, audio versions for folks who want that. So you can find it at all the normal places, and it's really a book that I created to introduce people to lucid dreaming, and also for people who have had 20 or 30 lucid dreams but want to accelerate their progress, want to go deeper into it and understand how to kind of master lucid dreaming.
Okay, and how does one stay, or even why does one stay conscious in the dream state with a lucid dream? Why would you, how does that happen?
Yeah, so they've done these studies where they've brought people into the sleep lab, and like one of them, they had a 19-channel EEG scalp recordings, all put on their head as they went to sleep. And then when they became lucidly aware, they signaled with their eyes that they are lucidly aware. And then the researchers could see, what does the brain look like? What's the brain activity like when you're in a lucid dream? And one of the fascinating things they found is that the normal part of the dreaming brain, which is more around the brainstem and the old part of the brain, is all active like it would be in a normal dream. But along with that and simultaneous with it, parts of the cerebral cortex, part of the frontal lateral cortex, are simultaneously active. And that's the newer part of the brain that, holds our sense of self-awareness, our ability to reflect on things, our sense of a being or a self in space. And those parts of the brain are simultaneously active. And researchers were really amazed to see, and some called it a hybrid state of consciousness, because the dreaming part of the brain's active, but parts of the conscious mind or conscious brain are simultaneously active. And so that's part of it. In a lucid dream, we move from just going along with a regular dream to suddenly having some sense of critical reflection, our self-awareness. We kind of understand, wait a second, what am I doing in Tokyo? I don't live in Tokyo. oh, this must be a dream. We had that sort of moment of critical awareness, and then that's enough to shift the trajectory of the dream, and now we're lucidly aware where we can begin to influence and decide what exactly it is that we want to do. And so the research results have shown, that the experience that lucid dreamers have all been talking about, that critical reflection, that sense of awareness, that making decisions and choices of what to do, it all occurs within the lucid dream state.
So now that would make me wonder even more about my next question. That is dreaming comparable to death? I mean, it's almost like getting a taste of what's to come, because I don't know. It's when you're sleeping, if you could go on all these adventures and have all these wild things happen, I gotta wonder if that's not the spirit's playground or something.
Well, it's an interesting thing to bring up. The lucid dreaming has been scientifically validated since 1980, but for thousands of years before that, various spiritual traditions have been talking about lucid dreaming. There's been shamanic traditions, and also there's the Buddhist and the Hindu and Sufi traditions have all been talking about lucid dreaming. In fact, oftentimes when you'll read books on dream yoga, which is kind of the Buddhist philosophical practice that includes lucid dreaming, basically the writers normally say that lucid dreaming is a preparation for the death experience and the after-death experience. Because at that moment, you have to hold your awareness together in order to understand how to respond to what you're experiencing, because it's in many respects quite dreamlike. And so if you have enough experience as a lucid dreamer, you'll know how to respond most appropriately. But you're right. In some regards, dreaming is similar to death in as much as we exist in a mental space is what I want to say. So when you think of like an idea of heaven or something like that, it's in one way it's kind of like a mental or a spiritual space. I mean, you don't have to eat food, you don't have to go to the groceries, you don't have to put gas in your car, from what I can imagine. And so lucid dreaming is much like that. You become consciously aware within the dream state. You learn, you grow, you experience things, but you don't have those physical needs. And so in some ways it is actually quite comparable to what I would imagine the after-death experience would be like.
I hope that's what it's like. I mean, I just hope it's not as confusing. I mean, sometimes you could have dreams that are just crazy. I mean, they just don't.
Hello.
Good evening, Robert. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you tonight?
Good, Michael. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here on the show. And I couldn't remember if we had you on before. I thought we did. Do you remember? Have you been here?
No, I haven't been on with you folks. So
No.
This is the first time.
Oh, okay. Well, great. It's a great topic, I'll tell you that. So I'm looking forward to diving in. Robert, why don't we start out with a little background? Tell people what got you interested in lucid dreaming and going down this road and writing the books and just the whole interest of it all.
Yeah, I was one of those young guys who just had a incredible dream life. Sometimes I'd have precognitive dreams. Sometimes I'd have dreams where a voice would explain what was going on in the dream. And so I just had this fascinating dream life. Then when I was a junior in high school, I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan, and that's his third book. And in this book, his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, is suggesting to him that he become consciously aware in his dreams by finding his hands. And I thought that's interesting. I'd never ever heard of that and wondered if it was possible. So what I did, each night before I'd go to sleep, I'd just look at the palms of my hands while telling myself, tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And after doing that for about 5 minutes each night before I went to sleep, on the third night I was having a dream that I was walking through my high school hallway when suddenly my hands popped right in front of my face and I realized, oh, this is a dream. And it was an utter amazing, fascinating, profound experience. And so that's how I got hooked into lucid dreaming. After that, I realized here's this simple technique that anyone can use to become lucid. And once you become lucid, it's one of the mind-blowing experiences that people could ever have in their life.
So what is the difference then between lucid dreams versus other dreams? For those who may not know, what's the difference?
Yeah, so in a lucid dream, you consciously realize this is a dream. You know you're dreaming. So when you think of a normal dream, you just kind of go along with whatever happens. So if I find myself in Greenland and I flew there on a personal jet, it just never occurs to me to question any of that. I just go along with it. I never think, how did I get to Greenland? Whose jet is this? Or anything like that. I just go along with it. And so in a normal dream, we don't reflect on what we're doing. We just go along. We create a story to make sense of it, and we just run with it. But in a lucid dream, something strange happens. We think, wait a second, I don't own a personal jet. What's going on here? And at that moment of critical reflection, of critical awareness, we become lucidly aware. And as soon as you become lucidly aware, then you can begin to direct and influence yourself within this dreaming, and you can just do some extraordinary, amazing things.
Now, what would justify being aware? Because I've had dreams where, I remember them today. They happened years ago, and I can remember them. They were that clear to me. But so I felt aware during the dream, but I still didn't feel like I had any control. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. So that's a good point, because sometimes people think when I'm talking about a lucid dream, I just mean a really vivid dream, something that really affected me or just sticks in my mind and seemed real at the time. That's a vivid dream. In a lucid dream, you consciously know. For example, you might see a deceased relative and go, wait a second, grandma's been dead 10 years now. And at that moment, the only way you can explain it to yourself is by realizing, oh, this is a dream. And so at that moment, you know this is a dream. And as soon as you know it's a dream, then you can begin to make choices. You can go flying, walk through walls. You can do extraordinary, incredible things. But that's the difference. You know this is a dream, and you're totally, utterly, completely convinced of it.
Incredible. So now, what is happening in our minds during the dream state? What's going on in our minds that this happens? Because it's so real. It's like it's almost like the body and the brain falls asleep, and I guess the mind and the consciousness kind of say, okay, the kids are sleeping, let's get out of here for a little while.
Yeah. So each night, all of us spend about 2 hours or about 23% of the night in the dream state. And that's true of everybody, even people who claim they never dream. Unless you have some neurological condition or missing some brain lobes, you are dreaming. So about 2 hours or 23% of the night we spend dreaming. And it goes in various stages. As the night progresses, the dreams get longer. And what we've found in scientific studies is that lucid dreams are more likely to occur in the final 2 dream periods of the night. So those are the dream periods that are quite long, that might be 30 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour long. So those are long dream periods. But what happens, and they've done some scientific studies where they've looked at the brain in people who are lucid dreaming. And just so everyone understands, I'll tell you how they scientifically created the evidence that showed that lucid dreaming occurs. So back in 1978, there was Stephen LaBerge in California at Stanford. And then in 1975, there was Keith Hearn at the University of Hull in England. And both of these gentlemen realized that lucid dreaming had never been scientifically validated, but they wondered, could you move your eyes in a lucid dream and signal with your eyes that you're dreaming? And so they realized that in normal dreams, we all have rapid eye movement, that our eyes are kind of fluttering around. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and look at somebody, you might see them having that rapid eye movement experience. Yeah. But they thought if you became consciously aware in a dream and knew you were dreaming, maybe you could move your eyes left to right 8 times, and that would be captured by the rapid eye movement polygraph pad readout machine and provide the evidence for lucid dreaming. And so in 1978, Stephen LaBerge took himself into the sleep lab there at Stanford, and he began a series of experiments in which he signaled with his eyes left to right a certain number of times that he was lucidly aware. And he published that in 1980 and kind of became very well known as kind of the main researcher in lucid dreaming. So that's how they've scientifically validated lucid dreaming. But the great thing about lucid dreaming is you can signal with your eyes, you're lucidly aware, you can conduct experiments, you can even begin to kind of probe the dream state. You know, how does the dreaming mind actually work? Because for a lot of us, it seems pretty bizarre and symbolic and full of all sorts of strange things. But when you're consciously aware, you have that capacity to explore the subconscious mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I'll tell you, I've had some dreams that, thank God I woke up. I mean, I literally woke up with cold sweats. I mean, I had one dream one time where I actually got shot 5 times in a dream. I woke up and I actually hurt where I got shot. I mean, I felt pain in those spots for a few seconds.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the interesting things about dreaming is that, when we're dreaming, we're actually releasing a fair amount of neurochemicals. We might have adrenaline when we're being chased or shot, and we might have all sorts of neurochemical events kind of occurring in response to what we're seeing in our dreams. And so the idea of waking up on the wrong side of the bed or having these kind of experiences where we wake up with our heart pounding, I mean, this is very much for real. But I think it shows one of the beautiful things that lucid dreamers have kind of gotten into, and maybe we can talk about later. But it's the idea, if you're consciously aware in a lucid dream, can you use it to physically influence your body and maybe even possibly heal your body of a physical ailment? And so that's why this mind-body connection of dreams seems quite fascinating, because once you become consciously aware in a lucid dream, then you can explore that and experiment with it on your own.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was going to ask you about down the line here is whether it can be used, lucid dreaming could be used for not only healing, but diagnosing.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that lucid dreaming can be used for. If people really understood it, and that's why I've written this new book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, to help people not only learn how to induce lucid dreams, and I give a lot of